Yeah, I'm back.
Hello.
Hi guys.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
What? That's what got the kind of ball rolling, isn't it? Well, now that I think about it, isn't when was the last time we had this happening even before the season began, as in transfers for the next season being in the headlines? I can't remember the last time that was the case. It's usually summertime in mid-season, isn't it?
Well, in a way, it is mid-season right now, almost.
No, I guess what I meant was like without anything happening or anyone's performance on track
Hmm.
coming in way.
I don't think they had an option.
True. Yeah.
Thank you, Ferrari.
No way.
I think in all likelihood he might be away for 2021. That's looking very likely, I think.
Not so sure. I mean, I feel the sister team of Alpha would be more than willing to give him a spot. And Kimmy's what, turning the better half of 40 right now. So, as much as I love him, I think his time has come. So yeah, I feel like his if nothing else pops up for Vettel, at least there's always a space in Alfa Romeo for him.
Right. So great news for the stream. My mic was muted all this time on stream, so that's fantastic.
Oh
Uh,
wow!
Nice.
but okay, so I'm not sure if we should restart or what the agenda is, guys, but
Let's restart. Five.
okay,
Why not?
take two, guys. So just a quick, let me summarize what I said so far. So we have Black Sheep, Faizan, and a couple extremely important people in IRC in their own unique way. I'm going to summarize the intro from before. We kind of got into the question I asked was, where do you think Vettel's going to go? And you heard the responses. Thank you Ferrari for giving us entertainment during this time. Um, right. So apologies for that. Now where do we go from here?
Yeah.
This is not typically start. It didn't start in the best way.
No, I would like to add something to that.
Oh yeah, Faizan, go ahead.
I think Vettel will be out of his seat for 2021, but I think he will be back. I think he might already have a deal with Aston Martin. I think he might be just waiting on the sidelines to see how they perform. And if they're doing good, he might be back in 2022 or 2023.
That's actually very interesting you bring that up because during Vettel's time at Red Bull, he was extremely involved with development of Infinity cars. I'm sure you've heard of them.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
Red Bull drivers last season actually worked with the Aston Martin Valkyrie to an extent. And I think Vettel is one of the most intelligent drivers on the grid when it comes to car development in general. So I wouldn't be surprised that if Aston Martin, because then the Aston Martin deal would make certain sense. Because if you look at some of the Aston Martin cars that have come out, they're moving more and more away from the 007 imagery and moving actually towards pure drivability, at least the new Vantage and stuff. So Vettel would kind of fit in there quite well.
Yeah.
Well, Vettel has this thing of kind of liking to be very involved in car development and getting a new team and um, yeah, new set of kind of surroundings and getting thrown in the deep end and capitalizing on that. I think he might take that as a nice challenge.
Certainly, I certainly think so as well. What do you think, Kapil? Do you think that Aston Martin deal is going to be done?
I hope it does, but as far as their image is concerned, I mean, yeah, it's all to play for. I feel if I mean their introduction to F1 would definitely turn heads at the very least.
Right.
Can't say
Well,
much more than that.
you've got to remember that they have to get something done with their drivers before that happens, right? So, in all likelihood, they might have to kind of, I don't know, get Perez to go somewhere or buy his contract out. He's got a multi-year deal at the moment.
I think he has 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
think
I
it's
don't
still
think he's going anywhere.
2024, if I'm not wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think Perez is going anywhere.
But
The
one
only
thing
other
is,
person would be Lance Stroll.
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I think the best option I think Aston Martin has is to replace Lance Stroll, but I doubt how it's going to happen. I don't know with his longevity.
Yeah, that would certainly be a surprise. I think one thing for certain is that given how closely Aston Martin works with Mercedes in its car development, road car development nowadays, that at least the engine supplier will not be a question mark,
Yeah,
right?
they will be using Mercedes.
But in the interest of this discussion, let's come back to the topic at hand. Um, there's been several remarks of late that Vettel was never a great driver. He just won because of he had a great car. And let's face it, Formula One's always been an engineering heavy or intensive sport. So, um, what do you guys think? Because being a four-time world champion, then of course Alonso predated Vettel, and let's face it, did came very very close to the world championship. I think particularly in 2012. So, do you think who gets your vote for driver of the decade for Ferrari? Would you give it to Alonso or Vettel? Black Sheep, let's start with you.
Yeah,
So I think you touched upon it quite a few things. I don't think the argument is if Vettel was any good or if it was just in the machinery, because the years that he won with Red Bull, they were arguably probably the last great era of competitiveness that we had with several guys being in the mix for the championship. Since 2013 at least, we've not really had that for about 7 years anymore. So I don't think the argument stands that Vettel was simply great because he had the best car. He genuinely beat people and fought equally for all the championships. Coming to the point of who's the greatest for Ferrari recently, I think that's quite subjective. You could argue that Fernando he beat his, I guess, teammates in equal machinery with greater margins than probably Vettel did in recent years. But then Alonso was also known to be extracting more out of an uncompetitive car than I guess more people usually. But then you could also argue that Vettel has come closer to being the most recent Ferrari champion in at least 2017 than Alonso did, I guess.
Well, Alonso came within 2 points in or I think 5 points in 2012. So, um,
No, I mean in the turbo hybrid era.
right, right. That's a great point. Who gets your vote, couple?
Are those two the only choices?
I know you're going to say Kimi, but let's consider Kimi post 2010.
Yeah. I would not. So I feel on a level playing. Well, what was the situation in 2014? Were they teammates? I'm not too sure.
2014 was Vettel's last year at Red Bull.
Red Bull, right? My apologies. Right.
Danny Rick, yeah.
Uh, so yeah, just like how Black Sheep pointed out, both of them did tremendously well to get the best out of the machinery, but I feel my vote would still go to Alonso just because I don't know. It's I just again I feel it's down to my subjectiveness. I do feel like he brought he was a better fit for what Ferrari gave him as far as the car was concerned. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I think we could all see the moment that Vettel joined Ferrari. There wasn't a perfect synergy between those two, and that kind of showed in his performance too. Definitely in the latter half of the hybrid era, in 2018, 2019, even when the car started to show, just fit with Vettel and Ferrari just wasn't wasn't there. Just like when you compare it to Alonso and his time in the V8 era.
Right.
So yeah, having considering those things, I'd probably give my vote to Alonso.
I guess the only way to objectively look at it would be to ask how competitive the Ferrari has been in each of these years. And thinking about that, I would say at least the 2017 and 18 car was potentially a more of a championship winning car with Seb in it than, say, a 2013 or 2012 Ferrari.
Yeah, that's actually a
Not
great
too
point. I think.
sure about that because when it the 2012 and 2013 were definitely competitive too. You definitely see how close Alonso got to the championship.
Yeah, but is that not just down to Alonso?
Very well might have been. I mean, Massa was also quite close in the championship. So the car was definitely not an underperforming one as it was until 2018 for Ferrari.
On a consistent basis, I think that season Ferrari had over the course of the year probably the second best car on the grid competing. Um, but yeah, I think one point you made earlier, Black Sheep, that Alonso did have a knack of extracting everything out of a bad car, but Vettel had a knack of uh, pulling, making a great car successful. Um, but I think the major difference, I think Vettel as a whole is probably the better driver, but Alonso handles pressure far, far more. So I think as a world champion, as an overall driver, Alonso's probably 9 or 8 on 10 in all respects, but Vettel probably drops the ball in a few metrics quite far.
Are we there yet? Giving points to drivers? Is that what
No,
we
that,
did?
that was just my vote. I just hadn't done it yet. So for me, I still would give Vettel the side when it comes to drivability, but I don't think Alonso is. I still feel Alonso probably would extract more out of any car than Vettel. Faizan, what about you?
Yeah.
Haven't heard
Yeah.
from you though.
So it's 2-1, right? It's two for Vettel and one for Alonso.
Just a discussion. No one's keeping score.
Yeah. You obviously know like who I'm going to say is going to be a better driver.
Yeah, but
It
why is
is
Vibes looking
Alonso.
for? Yeah.
Yeah, but I'll give you like a good example of why I think Alonso is better than Vettel. If you look at the V8 era, the 2012 car, the 2010 car, Ferrari were not the best, you could say. Red Bull was clearly the best, at least on majority of the tracks. And the way Alonso came back in 2012, that shows, like how good he was, like at extracting the maximum performance from the car. Vettel was only good when he had the car underneath him. Whenever the car was bad, his performance dropped even more. Only if the car was performing according to his needs, and how he wanted the car to perform. He was out there leading the races. But if you put Alonso and Vettel in equal cars, Vettel probably is a better qualifier than Alonso. But if you look at the race pace, I think Alonso is much better than Vettel. And if you look at wheel-to-wheel racing, the majority of the wins Vettel had was he was starting on pole, and within 2 or 3 laps he was already 10 seconds ahead and he was gone. Um, but now, if you come to the V6 era and see how Vettel has performed, he has always struggled in the wheel-to-wheel racing department. We can see like last year's Bahrain, he just spun while battling with Hamilton without any contact. Um, so yeah, for these reasons, and even like whenever Vettel had a bit of a competition from his teammates, you could see him struggling a little bit. Like he was not completely 100%. It's like he was too much under pressure. Like in 2014 and 2019, he was uh, completely beaten by his teammates. And we can also say like whenever Vettel uh, has a clear number one and clear number two, only then he performs well. Because in the like when he was in the Ferrari and Kimi Räikkönen was his teammate, um, there were a lot of races where the Ferrari team favored Vettel. They had the worst strategy for Räikkönen probably in that race and had a decent strategy for Vettel. They always favored him in that way, but I think he performed well in those conditions. But when they were like on the equal, what do you say, like the equal strategies or something like that, Vettel always struggled.
So
So I think, yeah, Alonso is, you could say, like he performs much better under pressure, off pressure, like in most of the situations. So I think he's a better overall driver than Vettel.
definitely, I think thanks for your point. But just to address, so we'll get into the 2017 and 18 strategy or the part where Ferrari were actually competitive a little later. But given your point about wheel-to-wheel racing, I think Vettel did slip up in 2019 quite a bit. There's no doubt about that. But if you look at some of his early 20s, his 2017 and early 2018 driving, I'm not really sure that there was anything lacking. I mean, if you look at one of the best moves of the season was his overtake on Bottas in Spain, where he did three moves behind him and two wheels on the grass, closing in on the braking zone. And I think that was a beautiful move, pure art. And then also his move around the outside of Ricardo in China. He certainly showed moments of brilliance when in the 2017 car, but that again goes back into the discussion of I think he's good when the car suits him. Um, but and at his peak, he's probably better, in my opinion. At the same time, yeah, Alonso probably was definitely a more consistent and more reliable racer when it came to wheel-to-wheel racing. He's always been a fighter, his Spanish blood.
Yeah.
To add to your point, the end of the day, I mean, yeah, we definitely saw glimpses of his old V8 past in the V6 era. I mean, he was quite inconsistent, but yes, there were always glimpses of his former glory. But at the end of the day, this still, we can't take away from the fact that he is still a four-time world champion. And during the entire V8 era, he had to go through that pressure and wheel-to-wheel racing during those 4 years. Yes, it might have been his earlier years where he was in his prime. It definitely feels so because the V6 era, well, he was not up to the same scratch. But you still can't take away just because he did not perform to his absolute best in Ferrari, we can't take away from the fact that he's an absolutely brilliant driver.
I 100% agree with you. I think it's a privilege for us to have watched both of them. Um, I, we are just trying to figure out who the better driver is at Ferrari. But I'm just happy I got the chance to watch both of them, to be honest.
So let me just add to the point Kapil just made, and I think I kind of disagree with what Faizan said. I think at one point you mentioned, Faizan, that Vettel, in if he had the best car, he was simply able to cruise away and build a 10-second gap, and so on and so forth. But then, the years that he won the championship in were perhaps some of the most competitive years we've had. Um, at least looking back, at least 2010 to 2012, those 3 years. Uh, it's not like he was able to simply cruise away and win those titles, right?
Um, no, no. Like what I meant was, um, the cars were competitive. Like for example, if you look, there were like um, 4 teams, 5 teams winning the races. But most of the times, you could say that he was probably the fastest in qualifying. Red Bull simply had better downforce compared to the other cars. So on one lap pace, Red Bull was not the fastest, you could say, in the race. But in qualifying, they were clearly the fastest cars, Red Bull. So the races in which Vettel got onto the pole position and he got a clean start, there was no catching him then, because he was just like 10 seconds ahead, and because of the close competition between the other cars, they were fighting it out in the midfield while he was leading. That's what I meant, like when he went away like 10 seconds ahead.
But I think that kind of discounts your point on Vettel not being good, better than Alonso in race pace. Because if you said the Red Bull wasn't that great in race trim, he still managed to pull up a 10-second gap, let's say, in the first stint alone.
Yeah,
Doesn't
like the main reason was it clean air, right? Other people are in dirty air. He has a clean air and he's just gone.
right? I mean, first of all, I think in that era, the dirty air didn't play too much of a part.
Yeah.
And one thing Vettel's been known for, correct me if I'm wrong, Black Sheep couple, five Zan, but one thing Vettel's been known for is, until of course 2018 and 19, is his consistency in the race. He was always infallible or faultless when it came to just pure consistency, hitting every apex, hitting every braking zone, and just not making any mistakes, being extremely mechanical. And that's kind of why the comparisons have been made to Prost in a way. Um, Being politically extremely good, dealing with people in certain organizations, be it FIA within the team, having that cold, down to heart, down to earth driving style. So I still feel Vettel has the edge over Alonso in race pace, though.
Yeah, I would agree.
I can't agree with you completely on the aspects that you mentioned. Definitely, he's shown maturity and he's a down to earth guy. But instead of his consistency, I would say he's better off on charging through the field. I feel like he has a better, I mean, when compared to Alonso, he has a better knack for charging up the field. He's done that consistently both in the V8 and in the V6 era. Well, okay, we can't take away from the fact that Alonso was in a huge disadvantage in the V6 era, but we haven't heard many stories of Alonso having such dominant drives from the back of the field like Vettel has. Probably he never had many of. I mean, he was probably so consistent, Alonso, that he never started at the back. But that kind of racecraft was not what Alonso was known for.
Definitely. But let's like I think Vettel talking about driving from the back, 2012 Brazil. Oh my God, what a beautiful drive by him.
Yep. Yep.
And Malaysia 2017 too. That lap one. I think he gained about 10 or not 10 positions, but a significant number. I'll have to pull that data out, but I don't have that with me right now.
Yeah.
But let's not take away Alonso's probably one of the best starters that
Yeah, but
off the line that this
when you
yeah.
yeah, if you look at Vettel coming back from the grid, he always had the best car, didn't he? He was always having a faster car, which makes things easier. But if you look at Alonso, I would like to point out Azerbaijan 2017, I think, or 2018, I'm not sure.
2018, I think.
Yeah,
Yep.
where he had like both his right side tires were punctured and he was like last at the end of lap one. And McLaren in that year, to come from last to P7, I think it's that shows how much better he was in the race pace compared to others.
Well, you may be forgetting a safety car or two there.
Yeah, but if you talk about Brazil, and even there was a safety car, right?
No, but then I think the point was on a consistent basis. If you talk about Brazil, then let's even go back to say 2008 when Hamilton won his championship there. I mean, you could see Vettel still there, not at the front of the field, but being that guy who was consistently even trying to hunt Hamilton down to the end. So that precision in racing and charging through the field is something I think he's had even from his pre-championship years.
And let's not forget 2009. I think he's the only driver on the grid in 2009 who made Braun sweat. Uh, am I wrong, or was he third by a very narrow margin?
No, nobody made bronze sweat in 2009. I'm sorry.
That's true.
No, he was second. He was second in the championship 2009.
Couple, there you have it. He split the bronze.
Split the bronze, but that's Braun's fault. That's not Vettel's own.
Well,
Yeah, and they had Rubens Barrichello, who was like not
Yeah.
the best driver.
Yeah.
Braun over brain then.
Hmm. Well, to add to Alonso, well, we do know. Okay, in terms of Ferrari, okay. I want to bring a few more facets onto Alonso's side. I mean, he's had an amazing racing career beyond F1. We know how well he's been doing in IndyCar, how well he's been doing in endurance. He's won the 24 hours of Le Mans and the Spa, I believe. I'm not too sure, but don't quote me on this. But he's been doing, and I mean, he's not been afraid to venture out into the other sports and has still shown his prowess in those fields too. Nothing to take away from Vettel either. He's what the race of champions. 2 years in a row. Again, don't quote me on these numbers, but yeah, nothing to take away from these drivers. The only thing that we could really wish for was these two on equal grounds, duking it out in probably an F2004. That would be the ultimate showing of who's the better driver.
Yeah, but you can't beat the driver who drove that F2004. Let's be honest.
Yeah, there's no comparison. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point of view. I think seeing them on equal grounds on equal terms. I think I would love to see a Hamilton versus Schumi versus Alonso versus Vettel. That would have been a great battle. Yeah, but I think Vettel does very well with shorter wheelbase cars. I think that's another reason he loved the 2017 car, SF70H, I believe it was. Um, and people constantly say that that car was the better car that year to the Mercedes. And I have a counterpoint to that. If you consider the fact that Kimi Raikkonen, who's no slouch of a driver, came fourth in the championship behind the two Mercedes and Vettel. I firmly believe that those cars was equally strong, but on different tracks. I think the Mercedes definitely had the measure of the Ferrari on some of the higher speed circuits, but Ferrari definitely had the measure of them when the chassis control came into the way, and it was brilliant on its tires too. Not going to say that the SF78 was far superior to the Mercedes. It was just the fact maximum out of a good car.
Can't agree with you too much there because of all the internal team politics. We just never got to see the full potential of the car, I would say.
I think that's a great transition we have into what happened in 2017 and 18, or in the competitive years for Ferrari. So,
Yeah,
I
I'd
mean,
love to add something to that.
go ahead, Faizan.
Yeah. So if you look at 2017 and 18, the car Ferrari had that compared. Now, if you look at if you want to compare Alonso and Vettel, and if you say put Alonso in that car of 2017 or 18, he would have been a four-time world champion. And Vettel couldn't do it. That's what I think.
that's quite a statement because if you look at the issues Vettel had in 2017, what unraveled his season, if you look at Singapore, not really his fault. If you look at Malaysia, the engine issue, Japan, the engine issue, not really his fault. I mean, that's not something which could have helped in any way whatsoever.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I mean, I don't think, at least in 2017, you could say that Vettel just couldn't do it by himself, and that was down to him.
Faizan? Not sure if we lost Faizan there.
Yeah, I believe we've lost him.
Okay, we'll wait for him.
He's back.
He's back. Okay. Um, right. Faizan, did you catch everything Black Sheep and I said?
No.
Right. So what we said was that in 2017, what if you look at his season in 2017 alone? Let's not forget. Okay, 2018 he had errors, but 2017, um, if you look at the fact he had an engine issue in Malaysia and an engine issue in Japan, coupled with the uh, turn one incident in Singapore, it's not really his fault. It's not really much he could have done. And I think Black Sheep, you added something there as well.
Yeah, all I said was it's not. I think Faizan said that it was in 2017 at least he couldn't do it, and I don't think it's down to him not being able to do it, as if he wasn't good enough to be able to do it. I think he certainly was. The fact that he couldn't win the championship that year in 2017 was more down to, again, circumstantial issues that he may have had or car reliability issues here and there, which probably Hamilton did not struggle as much with as Vettel did with in the Ferrari.
Yeah. Certainly, the Mercedes engine has always been faultless when it came to reliability, except for maybe one or two minor issues in the last couple of years, like Germany quali for Hamilton. But yeah, I completely agree with Black Sheep there. Fives, and what do you think? Do you still agree? Do
Yeah,
you
no.
still feel it was
Yeah, yeah.
Vettel and not the car?
Ferrari had the issues, but I think Alonso has this ability, to do anything that is required to win the championship. He can sometimes get dirty, you could say, but at the end of the day, like even if he had those engine issues like Vettel did, I think he would have done. Uh, he would have probably performed more consistently throughout the season compared to Vettel.
Right.
And I think if he was in the same car, I think the story will be a different one.
Yeah,
If
I
you look,
actually want to add to a point of Faizan. I actually do agree with you that Alonso is definitely an amazing, reliable, and consistent driver. And we've seen that in his V8 era. Uh, it's just, I don't know. It's just, and when I look back at some of his driving in the V8 era, and even in the V6 era, he just had this style which, I mean, yeah, everyone knew that he was overdriving the car, or he just brought uh, all of what was available to him, and yeah, be it by internal or external means, he always was found a way to extract the most out of his team as well as his car, and I feel this quality that Alonso brought out when he was with Ferrari, I believe that Vettel could never really bring out the potential with him and his relationship with Ferrari.
Yeah, another thing I'd like to point out is that when was the last time you saw Alonso having a bad season in F1? I can't remember a single season since I started watching F1 that Alonso had a bad season uh, with respect to the car. Right? You can say like Vettel had a very poor season in 2014 and 2019, probably 18. But whenever Alonso was like, no matter where, if he was in a top team or a midfield team, he always beat his teammates and always beat them by a huge margin compared to Vettel.
Vettel, if I'm not wrong, has always beaten his teammates except for 2014. But I can't remember I think after Ferrari, I can't remember the last time Alonso had a good season. Uh, to be honest,
No, like what I meant is like depending on the car, right? You can't expect him to win championship in the McLaren, but if you like the only like the best way to see if he had a good season was to see what his teammates did and the other teams with a similar pace, and I think um, he had clearly outperformed them all.
Certainly, I think Alonso's been probably the number one driver of his team, undisputed. There's no doubt about that. But if you look at, I mean, if you consider the Honda engine, which failed every three races or less, um, Alonso wouldn't have won a championship with that kind of reliability, no matter how quick the car was on raw pace. Granted, the car didn't have the pace, but with that kind of reliability, no driver can win a championship.
Yeah.
And if you look at this gap between Hamilton and Vettel at the end of the season in 2017, I think that was largely down to this to Singapore, Japan, and Malaysia. Apart from that, Vettel was toe to toe in Hamilton against Hamilton pretty much every race.
I think one of the reasons for that less gap in 2017 was that Hamilton knew he was going to win, and he was not, giving his 100%. Valtteri Bottas was winning the races. You can see, no, we can see from the previous seasons that whenever Hamilton has won the championship, he just switches off. No, he's like simply not at his level until the season begins again. So I think that is probably one of the reasons for the less gap in 17.
Right. Um, I don't think that's purely
Yeah,
subjective. That's purely
I,
subjective. We can never say who's giving the max, who's not, because we really aren't in the driver's heads, are we?
Yeah.
a driver who's at the top of his game would never consciously just give up or tone it down just because he feels like it. When he's on race day, there's only one thing on his mind, and that's for P1.
Right.
I don't think any driver in their right mind would go into race day saying, you know what, it's just another weekend, let's just take it easy and just bring the car home. No driver would ever think in that mental. That would be a team principle or an engineer's perspective. But for a driver, it's always maximum, maximum, and P1.
Yeah, especially for a pure racer like Hamilton, he's not going to want to finish with P2, is he?
No, definitely not.
But he plays a lot of mind games.
Certainly, he plays mind games to win. And
Mind games, and he can play mind games to keep his teammate happy also. You can never tell.
certainly, Australia wasn't just mind games, my friend. Australia was Ferrari strategy. Just kidding. Um, right, but I think coming on to whether Vettel now that we're on the strategy topic, I just think it's a good transition. I'm not sure how much time we have, but if you look at some of the strategy decisions in 2017 and 18 before Leclerc came in, um, Vettel was certainly favored by the team. But incidents like Monaco, first of all, Monaco, do you guys think was it favoring Raikkonen or Vettel? Because or was it just the fact Vettel has always been extremely good on his tires and managed to go those few extra laps? So what do you guys think? Was it strategy or was it Vettel?
You're talking about 2017 one.
Monaco, yes.
I think it was team favoring because as as I remember, Raikkonen was on pole and leading the race, and he was asked to pit, and then Vettel did the overcut, and he was suddenly lapping a second faster than Kimi Raikkonen. But I think that, Kimi Raikkonen had the pace uh, similar to Vettel, and he could have lapped at the similar place, but he was not allowed to do that, or
Right.
he was not given the engine power to do that in the first stint. And I think Vettel was just allowed to do that, once Kimi pitted, and that's why I think he was angry on the radio also.
What Kimi said, or what Ferrari came out with after the race, but is that 2017 Monaco, Kimi pitted on the pre-agreed upon lap. There was no change of strategy. They had done the practice, they had done the race runs, and Kimi pitted based on the team radio. But Vettel came back and said that, you know what, my tires are good. I'm going to stay out for a little while longer. I'm going to try the
Yeah,
overcut.
that is what Vettel always does, right? Whenever he's on the losing side, he always changes the strategy or doesn't listen to the team. That's what he has always done
But isn't
to
that a
win.
But
credit
then
to
that
him to understand his tires
exactly.
and preserve them? Black Sheep, go ahead.
No, I was going to say exactly the same thing, but isn't that what you expect him to do? I mean, if he's fighting for the championship,
Yeah,
that's
but
what
isn't that
you would
unfair to
expect.
Raikkonen? Because he followed the team strategy and he could have won the race, but he had his trust on Vettel. Like he trusted him to follow the strategy as well, but he didn't. So you can't say that Monaco win was completely deserved. Like he did drive a very good race, and he obviously what do you say won the race, but you can't say like it was 100% deserved. I think Kimi could have done the same pace if required, but I don't think he was allowed to.
We've got to
Yeah,
also remember this is Vettel we're talking about. He's not really the most forgiving person when it comes to teammates.
yeah, but it's still Ferrari. You're expected to you're still expected to bow down to them and to obey their orders. He did it happily, even though he could have done. If there were no engineers, who knows? Probably Kimi could have won. I'm not going to put because in Monaco it's all about track position, and we all know how brilliant Ferrari's strategy is. So at the end of the day, maybe Vettel just wanted it so badly that he went against his own team for the win. Probably, I can't say I can't fault Kimi for following his team's order.
Yeah,
Actually, what do
like
you think?
imagine the backlash on the internet or like or anywhere if Kimi had not followed the strategy
You know what?
compared to Vettel.
You know what, Faizan? I think it's not about how Kimi feels, about how Vettel feels. Vettel has always been an expert at this. He's always done this, and I think he continues to do it. If you look at 2018 USA, he was on fresher tires to Bottas, but he could have pushed Bottas, burnt his tires out, and may not have gotten the overtake done while battling when Bottas' tires were fresh. So he sat back, kept his engine cool. The moment Bottas' tires went off the cliff, then he made his move. He sat back until then, and that's very, very similar to Monaco 2017. He sat back out of Kimi's range. The moment Kimi pitted, he had preserved his tires enough for the soft tires to still be relevant over the mediums, which is what allow. And let's not forget, 2017 tires were extremely durable. They could go the distance.
But
Um,
let's also
Exactly.
not
I think
forget
Kimi
who
had the
won
tires.
US 2018.
okay, fair enough, Kimi for the win.
Just kidding. Yeah.
So, Black Sheep,
But
what do you think about the Monaco strategy? Do you think it was purely Vettel's credit? Do you think he was wrong in disobeying the team orders, or did he just tell the team that, you know what, my tires are good, I'm going to go a little while longer? Um, these decisions are taken by drivers. So, Black Sheep, sorry, go ahead.
I think we can just sit back and argue it out if you want to, but at the end of the day, I don't think it matters. As you said, which driver feels what. It may as well have been that Vettel did genuinely feel that his tires could go and that he changed it on the go. But then you can't fault him, right? If he's fighting for the championship, then that's what you would expect him to do. And I think somebody mentioned here, imagine the backlash if if Kimi had done it. But then we are in the midst of the backlash now, isn't it? For the other situation, we are now going on about what Vettel did and how Kimi was robbed instead. So
Fair point.
No, like the backlash in terms of the amount of fans.
Ah, come on, a
If you
Formula
look
driver
at it,
can't care about what the internet thinks, can he? In the
yeah,
middle of a
that's
race.
it. Yeah, but like see, like you said, like 2017 tires lasted longer compared to the other years,
Yeah.
and Kimi Raikkonen was in the fresh air. He was not pushing the car. He, um, you could say he had similar tire life left, if not more than what Vettel had, and he could have carried on for much longer if he wanted to. But I think he just stuck to the plan, what was decided before, and Vettel didn't. That's all. I think that's what happened there.
yeah, Kimi didn't ask questions. He just followed orders. He
That's
knew that he just believed in the team and just took it. Yeah, just let them have it their way.
that's what separates team leaders from soldiers, right? Soldiers follow orders.
Fair enough. I disagree there.
Yeah. And moving on, what do you think drove Vettel's decision in leaving the team finally? Why do you think? I know it's undisclosed personal issues, not money related, but what do you really feel was Vettel's thought process behind leaving Ferrari, or was it his decision to begin with? Black Sheep will start with you.
I, uh, we can only speculate, but I think it could be a mixture of frustration being the prime reason, I guess, not having the car under him the way he likes it. And then perhaps also what's been going on, or at least what went down last year, at least in the second half of the season, where he saw that he was not being favored as the number one anymore, and that he could see Leclerc coming up, and that the team was quite vocal about how they were both kind of being treated equally. Um, I mean, he could see that from Bahrain itself, right? When Leclerc was asked to, okay, stay back for another lap or so, and then he just went ahead and overtook him. I mean, that was probably an indication of, at least to Vettel, of how things were to be in that season later on with Leclerc. So perhaps a mixture of all those things.
I think Vettel took revenge for that in Russia. But on your point about Vettel's frustration that Leclerc got favoritism, I think there's no doubt he's the favorite in Maranello right now. But at the same time, I don't believe that. Do you think Vettel just doesn't want to fight and he wants to be a clear number one driver? Do you think is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that he probably fell out of trust a little bit with the team. Um, That's what I think. It's probably not just frustration that he's not number one anymore. It's not a hit to the ego, I guess, more so as frustration of not having the potential, or frustrated with his partly his own performance as well over the last couple of years.
Right. I think the car was very unstable under braking, and I think if you're unstable under braking with these modern cars, your rear tires just go. Um, right. And Kapil, what's your view on that? Why do you think Vettel is leaving?
Um, I just feel, I mean, to a point I made in the beginning, Ferrari and Vettel, I just feel they were never a perfect match. There was just something that never suited each other. I mean, yeah, Vettel was very forthcoming and was a team sport when it came to the press and being a good public figure for Ferrari, but when it came to the track, it kind of showed in his performance in the later years that this is not working out. So I feel it was just a matter of when, not if.
I think you're right. He just got more and more desperate towards the end to emulate his idol, and I think that frustration and that desperation kind of drove him to, pun intended, to make certain mistakes. Certainly. Faizan, what about you? Is money? Is it any? Do you think it's nothing to do with money, or all to do with where he stands in the team?
Uh, I don't think it's anything to do with money. Like I said earlier, right? Vettel doesn't like competition. Like if he sees that there is someone who is better than him or equal to him as a teammate, he always struggles. One of the main reasons is he doesn't follow team orders. Leclerc doesn't follow the team orders if it favors him. So he met his match, you could say, somewhat with Leclerc in the season. But Ferrari, you could say, did favor him a little bit still until you could say Singapore 19. Uh, they still favored Vettel compared to Leclerc. But you could see that after that, they said Leclerc is going to be our number one driver. And Sebastian Vettel always had the dream to emulate what Schumacher did. And he's like 32, 33 years old. And he is already in the Ferrari. So I don't think anyone would leave Ferrari at that stage, even if he was unhappy with the team, like unhappy with the car or something, because there is always a possibility of the car improving in the future and him going on to win the championship. I think the only reason he left Ferrari is because he thought that it will damage his reputation if he got beat by Leclerc again. That's what I
Actually,
think.
do you want to respond to that?
A very kind of non-point I'll make on a slightly different tangent. Do you think it had anything to do with him finding out about how the 2020 car is in testing?
That's a great point. What I think testing Testing isn't representative, and Ferrari have kind of brought out the fact that they've had a huge update on their engine for the season after testing. In addition to that, they also have more downforce coming, redefined diffuser, barge boards, and slightly modified front wing as well. So there was going to be about a 15 to 20% overall increase on downforce. These are pure rumors coming out of some Italian media source. Uh, but if that was true, I'm not really sure that Ferrari would mind that much, as in Vettel would mind that much, especially since the new regulations for next season uh, kind of redefine car concept itself. You're going back to the drawing board with all but your engine. And Ferrari typically have done well when it at change of regulations. If you look at 2017, if you look at even they may have gotten a couple of years to get into it, but in the initial part of the turbo hybrid era, Ferrari were competitive. They lost track as the type turbo hybrid era drew on, but in the initial part they were competitive in the first season or two.
I'm sorry, what?
2010 maybe not, 2011 certainly they were, 11 and 12.
Is that turbo hybrid though?
V10. Shit, sorry, V10 era. I think
V8,
Vettel, I think turbo
V8.
hybrid. So V10 era. Sorry about that. Yeah, but Faizan, I mean, Kapil, Black Sheep, I completely agree with both of your points to an extent. Faizan, what about you? Um, I know you mentioned that it's nothing to do with money, but do you really believe that Vettel is going to shy away from a fight? I mean,
Uh,
he's gotten this is probably his last move or last team in his career where he can win the title. Do you think something as trivial as a teammate will force you to move out?
yeah, I think so. Because if you look at the history, he moved away from Red Bull uh, when he thought he's simply not what do you say. Um, Ricardo is probably faster or equal to him. I think the similar thing might have happened there um, you're because he wants to stay in F1, right? Clearly, he doesn't want to retire.
Yeah.
We can see from the rumors that he was looking at other teams. He's probably still looking to race in F1. And if you're in the Ferrari at that stage of your career, I don't think just because the car is bad or um, money is not right, he's just going to leave the team. I don't think so. There, it has to be like you could say shift in power. You could say
Politics, yeah.
in Ferrari, I think they were favoring Leclerc more, and he thought maybe like even if the car is good in the future, and you could say like there was a fight between him and Leclerc for the championship, they were always going to favor Leclerc.
So you're
So that's
saying
I
that
think one of
you're
the
saying that
reasons
it's not just Vettel who lost the number one driver spot. He was asked to be number two to Leclerc.
he was clearly asked to be number two. That's one of the reasons I think he restricted the contract
Definitely, I
because
don't
he
think a
wanted to
four-time.
win the championship,
Yeah, certainly, I don't
and
think a
there was
four-time world
no
championship
yeah.
would take that. They certainly wouldn't take that. But I think we have a few minutes left, so we've got about six main questions that have come in from the audience today. So the first question was, how did Vettel lose to Ricardo? No hate, he's just asking. He didn't watch that season. Um, Black Sheep, I think you were following the 2014 season quite closely, so why don't you take this?
Should we break away from the pattern of starting with me for once?
Sure,
I
okay.
just want to hear what others have to say.
For me, I think it was a combination of the fact Vettel already had a contract with Ferrari. So Vettel's an extremely emotional driver. If his heart's not in it, he just doesn't drive quickly. It's not like he let Ricardo win. He's a racing driver. He doesn't let anybody win. But he's an extremely emotional driver, and coupled with the shitty reliability he had during that season, um, yeah, that's why for me Ricardo won. Couple, why don't you go next? We'll go with Black Sheep last this time.
I feel yeah, the car definitely let him down in 2014, but I also feel Ricardo was a better driver
That season or in general?
in that season. I'm not gonna generalize it, but definitely in 2014, he was definitely a more competitive driver in the band.
Right. What about you, Faizan? Ricardo or Vettel?
Um, I think Ricardo, but like I think the best way to compare Vettel and Ricardo in 2014 is to look at the races they both finished in, because Ricciardo didn't have a clean season himself. Like even he had a few retirements, but there were three races won other than Mercedes, and all of those three were by Ricciardo. So you could say that he took the opportunities that were presented. Um, Vettel couldn't, and I think the main reason, which I pointed to earlier also, is like if the car is not according to his liking, he always struggles. So that's one of the reasons I think he lost out to Ricciardo in 2014.
Okay, so there you have it. There you have it. That's why Vettel lost to Ricardo. Just our view on it. Don't quote us. Um, but combination of both reliability issues. Few people here think Ricardo was better that season. Black Sheep, actually, we didn't go. I almost missed you completely.
So I want to link it back to something Faizan said earlier when I think he mentioned that Vettel usually does this when he's being beaten. He kind of runs away from a fight or something. So I think specifically to 2014, I don't think that was completely the case because a contract with Ferrari probably had something to do with it. Um, you wouldn't say somebody moving to Ferrari is because they're shying away from a fight, because it's obviously because they're moving to Ferrari. So yeah, I agree with Adil there that coupled with his heart was not in it and the fact that he had a Ferrari contract, I mean, there was nothing for him to lose again there. But yeah.
Right. Question two. Do you think Vettel got most out of his Ferrari stint given the team weren't at their peak since he joined? Let me start with this. No, I certainly think he didn't get the most out of it. He's definitely pulled the team out of a rut. It's something only great drivers can do, and I think he is a great driver, whatever issues he's had. He pulled the team out of a rut. He performed well with the 2017 car, couldn't get the job done, whatever, but he did perform well. There's no taking away from that. 2018, I think that's where the biggest gap to him getting the most out of his Ferrari stint comes into the equation, right? 2018 is where you had several um, driver errors, team errors, and I think that's certainly something which he could have. That's certainly where he didn't get the most out of his stint. 2018 should have been Ferrari's year. Faizan, go next.
Yeah. If you look at, I think 2015, when he came to the team, Ferrari team, he was really motivated, you could say. I think that was probably the only year I think he utilized the car to the maximum. And the remaining years, I don't think so. Uh, like I mentioned earlier as well, if it was some other driver in the team in 2017 or 2018, they would have won the championship with that car.
Okay, so that's a no from you as well. Couple, why don't you go?
Yeah, I would agree with Faizan. He definitely. I mean, yeah, I always felt like the match wasn't good, and that's and when you compare it to someone like Alonso, you can definitely see that Alonso bought more out of the car. So to kind of put, or not put an end to the first debate, but my verdict on the first debate, based on the Ferrari verdict, would be Alonso being a better driver for Ferrari.
Okay.
I don't know. It's kind of a random tangent, but I don't know. I just had to put it out there.
You haven't forgotten about that's going to be the cap on our conversation today. But thanks for your view. Actually, why don't you go? Did I think I already know the answer, but do you think he got the most out of his stint?
So I would partly agree that no, but I think an overarching issue that's been playing at Ferrari for the last, I don't know, 5 6 years has been, you mentioned, driver errors over the last couple of years, and then obviously strategy issues. But that's race by race. But I think an overarching issue has been a complete lack of leadership at Ferrari. Just not a lack of decisiveness in what the direction was, who's to be favored, what the team generally wants to achieve, and what the driver dynamics and the team dynamics is. And I think that partly has played a part in Vettel or anyone else with a Ferrari over the last few years not being able to do what they perhaps wanted to.
Sure. Um, I couldn't agree more. But one thing we shouldn't discount is the mental effect Vettel has had on the team. the team doesn't think about is finally not going off since the V10 era. I nearly said turbo hybrid again. Since the V10 era, there may have been a lot of errors, but Vettel certainly has made the team think about winning again. They aren't just content with uh, content with just finishing or being the third or fourth best team on the grid. So
Absolutely.
that is a mental shift which you cannot
I
ignore.
absolutely disagree there.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't fault Alonso for coming very close, being P2, and having a very competitive season in the V8 era. I mean, Ferrari's always been there to win. You can't take. I don't think Vettel had that big of an image shift for Ferrari that they suddenly get back on track to winning days. I feel like every driver, maybe not Kimi in the later half, but Ferrari as a team has always stuck to their principles since the beginning of the race. And I don't believe that any single driver has exactly tainted or shifted their image. They've stuck to their values right from the get go, and it's going to take a hell of a lot of a retaliation or rebellion from maybe the community or both the drivers to actually make a difference to the team. No.
But that is the case, right? I mean, Ferrari realized that they were not the best car by far in the turbo hybrid era, and then couple that with the fact that year on year you keep your managers getting changed. What's the team going to feel? You could argue that Vettel has been that constant in all these years through these changes for the team, right?
Well, that he could just have played the good boy and just just try to save his seat in Ferrari because that's been his dream job from day one.
Absolutely disagree. I don't think there was any instance where Vettel came to a thought that I have to do something to save my seat. I think he had that seat saved anyway.
I
There was
agree
no
with you there, but that doesn't mean that he went out of his way to rebrand Ferrari. I mean, he just stayed there and said, you know what, it's not my fault. I'm just going to stick around and hopefully you guys are going to fix Ferrari. But I don't think I've been doing anything wrong. I feel like he just stuck around and just played it to his advantage.
Okay, then. There you have it. The different views on whether Vettel turned Ferrari into a winning team, whether they were.
Yeah, I to add to that.
Yeah.
Uh, I think one of the reasons like Vettel failed in his Ferrari stint was he tried to do what Schumacher did. Like he didn't look at like what is better for him. Like he just went to Ferrari and he did what Schumacher did. Like when Schumacher was at Ferrari, what he did was he was involved way too much in almost all the aspects of the team. Right, he was involved with the engineers. He was involved. I don't know, like in a lot of things. And Vettel tried to do the same thing when he came into Ferrari, and I think that backfired a lot onto him because that was not. I think he's one of his strong suits, so that can be one of the reasons.
Okay. Politics, Vettel too much into politics. That's Five view of the team and not just sticking to driving. Partially agree with that. Have to be honest. Um, right. We don't have much time, so I'm just going to move on to the next few questions. Um, right. Who is doing the graphics for us? Is it you, Ninja? Yes, it is Ninja. He's our Chief Editorial Officer, CEO. Just kidding. Anyway, who do you guys think among the two gets more overwhelmed with their emotions while driving the car, Vettel or Alonso? Faizan, we're going to start with you. Just one word answer. Who do you think? One word and one line only.
Vettel. Vettel.
Vettel gets more overwhelmed by emotions. Okay.
Yes, you can see him singing on the radio and stuff.
Okay.
Alonso never does that. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes there's things between his legs which reach his ankles. But anyway, um, couple. What about you?
Probably say equal. Both are quite emotional.
Certainly.
My-
Black Sheep.
I would say equal as well, but I'd probably tilt slightly more towards Alonso.
Yeah.
In quite a lot of vocal frustrations that he has spit out, at least over the last few years.
Certainly, I think the reason Alonso doesn't have a drive today is because of that, precisely.
Yep.
My view is, in terms of who has more emotions within the car, Alonso certainly. Who can handle them better? Alonso again, because Vettel's driving reflects his emotions quite a lot. So I'm going to have to give the edge to Alonso here. Um, do you think Vettel spins trying to extract more than a car can handle while having the enormous pressure of beating the unstoppable Mercedes? Isn't that what spinning is? Trying to extract
Yeah.
more than the car can handle.
Not exactly. That just means
Not in
bad
Kimmy's case.
chemistry, maybe? Bad driving?
Well, not enough rear downforce makes your car spin.
No, too much throttle makes it spin.
Not enough. Too much throttle stems from not enough rear downforce. Throttle is
Well,
subjective.
if you know how to drive a car, you probably won't be making that mistake.
Hello. Uh, look who you're talking to. But anyway, throttle.
You forget sometimes. He's getting of age. Sometimes he forgets how deep the pedal goes.
Fair enough.
It happens. It happens to the best of us.
No, but I think if you had enough downforce, an unlimited amount of throttle could help, for example. But cars today don't have unlimited downforce. So did Vettel spin trying to extract more than a car can handle? Yes, because that's what spinning is. But was it driven by the pressure of trying to beat Mercedes? Um,
Yes.
Faizan, short but sweet answer. You can extrapolate or be a little more comprehensive if you like, but
Yeah.
uh,
I just need to point out this. I think Ferrari cars in 17 and 18, I think they had an issue with the throttle where sometimes there were throttle spikes when you're accelerating. I think Kimi had a couple of spins because of that.
right.
I think that could be one of the reasons. Like one you could say maybe in practice sessions or during like when he was like in clear air under no pressure. But whenever he had a spin under pressure, I think that was because of him, his mistakes.
Okay. BlackSheep, why don't you go second?
Uh, I don't think I can add anything more to this. I'd have to say only that I don't think it was fixated because he specifically wanted to beat Mercedes. I think there were kind of isolated instances of battles that he was probably having at a certain time in the track, but not largely simply because he wanted to beat Mercedes.
Okay. And couple? I think you've
Uh,
already.
no, but I'd like to rephrase it in a more sweet way. Coming back to the initial debate, I think Vettel's how would I put it, overdrives the Ferrari in a bad way, but Alonso is able to overdrive the Ferrari in a good way.
Okay.
Any car he drives in a good way, overdrives in a
Yeah.
good way.
Alonso's a great
Not
racing
just
driver, certainly. Um, I've already given my view on this in between, but yeah. And final question is for couple specifically. Couple, do you think it
Okay.
was the car, and this comes from our very own SD. Um, do you
Okay.
think it was the car philosophy that didn't suit Vettel, or was it the key team chemistry?
Difficult question. What would you mean by team chemistry? Internal politics or the image of being in Ferrari?
I'm guessing it's a combination of a lot of factors. I'm not asking the question here, but I'm just assuming. It could be both where he stands as the driver, driver one versus driver two, versus both of y'all can fight, versus also some of the politics he played to try and get Arriva Bene out and Binotto to take the team principal role. For those of you who don't know, Vettel apparently played a huge part in that. Uh, Again, speculation. We haven't heard from Binotto himself or Arriva Bene himself. But yeah, I guess that's what team chemistry encompasses.
I'd probably go more with car philosophy.
Okay. Certainly, I think his short wheelbase cars do tend to suit Vettel a little bit more. He was brilliant
Hmm.
with Toro Rosso and Williams while he was there. But
Williams?
BMW, didn't you
Williams.
drive for BMW Williams? Or was it just BMW
It was a
Sauber?
Sauber.
BMW Sauber, right? Sauber.
Yeah, it was Sauber. I think.
Yeah, right. Right. So now that brings us to an end. So we can close on the final Alonso versus Vettel verdict, what you all have been waiting for. Um, Couple, Alonso sorry, in terms of quali pace, Alonso or Vettel?
Ah, quali pace. Vettel.
Vettel. Racecraft, sorry, race pace and race pace?
Race pace. Alonso.
Alonso and racecraft, certainly Alonso. I think I know your answer right now.
Yes.
Okay, and consistency, again, Alonso from you.
Yes.
Okay, so that's 3-1.
Actually, race pace. I would give to Vettel.
Fine, 2-all. It's a draw for you then.
Hmm.
And there's no overall verdict. There's just a few metrics. Black sheep for you. Quali pace,
Vettel,
race pace,
Vettel,
racecraft,
Alonso,
and consistency.
Alonso.
So that's that. And Faizan, race pace,
Alonso,
quali pace.
Vettel.
Surprised? Okay. Consistency and racecraft you already covered. I think
Yeah.
you're very clearly favoring Alonso. For me, I think race pace and quali pace, Vettel has him hit hard. In terms of consistency, I'm gonna say a pre 2018 Vettel, but but otherwise Alonso has gotten like over before 2018. I think Vettel was certainly more consistent, or had more consistent across the entire race. He was known for hitting the apexes. He was known for like going wheel to wheel with people. Um, but after 2018, he kind of lost the ball there. So overall, I'm gonna have to give it to. I'm gonna call this a draw. I'm not gonna put an opinion here.
And you were going to give an opinion. You had to.
I'm gonna go to Vettel
Oh, okay.
because I think after 2018 he reached retirement age, so I'm not gonna count it before that.
32
Okay,
is
fine.
not retirement age.
I'm just joking. I think Alonso's definitely the more better in terms of racecraft. And finally consistency, no doubt, Alonso. So Alonso does get the
No,
vote.
one sec. Um, I like to point a flaw here. Like you can't vote Alonso for consistency and then vote for Vettel in race pace because I think those two are related.
Um, no,
Clean
I,
air
I
race
think
pace.
yeah,
they're very
consistency
different things.
means winning battles
No,
or
what if you like, for example, in race you're doing like a 136, but you're not consistently doing 136 in the race. So how would you put that?
So that is exactly where I believe are you talking about the similarity between race pace and consistency?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me rephrase. Consistency over here for me meant reliability in terms of how much he delivered for the team, and not in terms of how consistent he was in his lap times. That's kind of what race pace was for. Uh, and for me, in terms of being able to deliver for the team, Alonso was certainly better at that. And for me, the overall vote probably for me, I can't decide between the two. It's a draw for me. Two votes for Alonso, two votes for Vettel. Overall, for me, it's a draw, and I think Alonso edges it just about in this conversation among the four of
yep,
us.
Yeah.
yep, yep.
I may be a little biased there. Just to give the viewers a heads up. Yeah, so that brings us to an end. Thank you all, Black Sheep, Couple, Five Zan. Thank you so much for being part of this first podcast. Guys, do send in any ideas you have for upcoming Q&As, podcasts, whatever, what have you, and we'll try and get the right audience onto that for you. Um, it's been Maranello Baby, along with our other podcast members, Black Sheep Couple and Five Zan, and thank you for joining us. See you next time.